want to thank you for hours and hours of entertainment and enjoyment over the years. Now, since John only has this place rented till 8 o'clock, we can't go and interview each one of these guys individually, which we'd like to. But you will have an opportunity to ask some questions so you can ask questions on specifics. So what we're going to do is ask some general questions and let them talk amongst themselves, and I'm sure we'll all be entertained and listen to some great stories. First of all, most people, the younger guys, the older people, want to know what it was like living in Rome during those days of making films in Italy. Who wants? Richard, were you the longest one, the oldest one being there? I was going to say, I thought you were the one been there the longest, earliest.
Oh, I guess I should be. I'll tell you, people always ask me.
Another microphone, Richard.
I'm supposed to have a voice like that. Thank you. Hello. Anyway, people always ask me, which country do you like the best and everything. I said, I love Italy in the 60s and the beginning of the 70s. It was the most fantastic place I'd ever been. It was like a little child going to Disneyland. And I suppose we were there at the best time, but I mean, it was just, for me, it was fantastic because, everything was wonderful. The people were wonderful, the food was wonderful, everybody treated us like royalty. I learned one thing, though, when they say, tu sei più di un fratello per me, which means you're more than a brother to me, to watch out.
He's absolutely right. I can remember getting the feeling that the national game amongst the Italian movie makers is who you can screw the most, who is closest to you.
Let's hope it was Sophia Loren.
Yeah. But Richard is right. It was a magic time. It was such a magic time that I wrote a novel about it called The Magnificent Strangers, and because we were treated like magnificent strangers. We were bigger than life, the American actors. The people loved us. They really admired us. Most of the guys, we all knew one another and kind of hung out together. One of the differences I remember between here and there, or between the Americans and the Italians, is if a film role came up and an Italian couldn't do it, he wouldn't tell anyone. But if a film role came up and an American couldn't do it, he'd call another American. We were very close knit that way. And that's all I have to say, Mark.
I think it's kind of interesting, and I think, I'm sorry, are you on? Well, Hunt, go first, because I can wait.
No, I just want to reiterate what they were all saying, the way that we all know about the world called La Dolce Vita. It was a wonderful movie, and it was truly the life that we lived there was La Dolce Vita. It changed my entire life. The whole way I lived, the whole way I thought about life, because the Italians taught me one thing. They work and play, and they play as work. The most important thing to the Italian is this moment right now. We're all sitting here. I may forget who you are 20 minutes later, you'll forget who I am, but this moment to them, the moment now is the most important thing. And that's, I learned a lot from them about enjoying the moment of the work, lunch, mangiati, or whatever. It was truly La Dolce Vita, and I miss it very much. Yes, they miss us and we miss them.
I want to talk about a couple of things I learned in Italy. First of all, when I first went there, of course I didn't speak the language at all. And I kept hearing people talking about Louis. And I said, my God, there are so many Italians called Louis. It's just amazing. It took me some weeks to find out that that just means him. I also learned about appointments. You know, as actors, most of us started in America, and an actor has to be very punctual. If you have an appointment at 3 o'clock, you're there 10 minutes to 3 to make certain that you don't keep anybody waiting. Well, when I would go on appointments, I would say, they'd say, well, come in, you know, let's meet. I said, fine, when? Nel pomeriggio, which means in the afternoon. I said, any particular time? He says, sì, nel pomeriggio. What I found was they never really respected appointments as such. It's when they felt like seeing you, no matter how long you were hanging around, they would do it. But I think one of the things that we should all talk about is how we all started in Westerns. And I'll tell you very briefly how I started. I had been acting in America for some years, and I'd never ridden a horse in my life. I went to Italy to do a film which was canceled, and I was stuck there. Then I went off to do a picture called The Longest Day in Paris. And I met a guy, a director named Sergio Corbucci, who said, you did The Longest Day, right? I said, see. He said, why don't you come and do a picture for me? I said, see. I said, what's the name of the picture? He says, The Shortest Day. It was a scoop on The Longest Day, so today I believe that I'm the only actor in the world who appeared in both The Longest Day and The Shortest Day. But Corbucci and I became friends. He was a great director, a good fun comedy director. All of us here know, of course, who Sergio Corbucci was. And one day he said, look, I'm going to do a Western. He said, why don't you do it? I said, well, I've never ridden a horse before. He said, you learn. I said, well, you know, Western heroes are usually tall and blonde. And I said, I'm not tall and I'm not blonde. He says, it doesn't matter. I said, well, why do you want me? He says, you're American. I says, that's the only reason? He says, I like you, but you're American. Because at that time, what you had to have was American names as stars in Westerns, because they figured that if they had an American name, whether he was a big name or not, as long as it was American, they could sell movies to America. Well, shortly after that, they learned that that was not necessarily the case. But you'll see so many Italian actors, all who have American names, and even some Americans. Robert Wood, you have an American name. Richard, I think you have an American name. Brett. But I mean, that was it. That's how I started. I had never done a Western before, never ridden a horse before. I became a Western star because simply I had an American name.